we are going to be bringing in elements of the neuroscience, elements of coaching. So coaching conversations to deliver grammar is the key focus of this webinar today. And making those conversations brain-friendly. Now, definitely, obviously, we're there to help people learn a language. So addressing maybe how language learning happens, maybe talking about how children learn a language really through the subconscious brain. Up until about the age of 7 or 8, we are just absorbing and absorbing in this implicit way of learning. And then from the age of 7 or 8 onwards, we can change a little bit the way that we can learn. So then we develop a new way of learning, which is with the prefrontal cortex, logical, analytical, rational, and through association. But I think many, many times as adults, we forget that we can learn both ways. We can learn explicitly and implicitly as well. Now, throughout the process, when we come into neurolanguage coaching, it is about talking about the brain with the learner and getting the courage to do that and being able to adapt the way that we do that with kids, teenagers, top executives, business people. So it is about sharing and helping them to connect with the knowledge of what is happening to them. If we think about it in a very simple way, language learning and any learning really is a front to back process. At the front, we have prefrontal cortex, we have short-term and working memory. That's the first port of call for new information. And little by little, that information or instantly that information is getting imprinted. So we're looking at shifting the short term into long term. And many, many times, you know, when we think about the brain, I like to think that in the middle, we have an emotional gateway. So the midbrain, the emotional brain, is almost like our emotional gatekeeper. And if there is an emotional trigger, if there is a threat, the emotional gateway is coming up. But that means that the flow, front to back to front, is impeded, it's hindered. And often, you know, when we have a drink, have a glass of wine, we call it Dutch courage, you know, then we start to flow happily and merrily because gateways are dropped, we're relaxed, we're very merry, and suddenly we can speak languages. Now, the question here is, how can we get that effect all the time without the alcohol? How can we help our learners to come into that very calm, relaxed state so that the brain is magnificently calm and functioning happily, front to back to front? And by the way, let's just remind ourselves that language fluency comes from the back, the cerebellum. So definitely there is this flow of information from the cerebellum to working memory, short term to long term. So a lot of what we do is the question of how can we help our learners normalize the language, the new language? Because once it becomes a normal habit, then they're losing those barriers and blocks. Now, the more that we can get them to do that with grammar from the beginning, the more used to actually using the language they're going to be. Like anything in life, we need to get the passive into active. And this is really true with language learning, because how many people have so much passive knowledge, but then they stutter, they stumble, they cannot bring it out. Now, the interesting thing here is we have to remember these are different neural networks. Listening, hearing, understanding are different neural networks to producing language. And this is why it's often a big hurdle, because we need to produce it. We need to say it. We need to get them teaching it, pronouncing it. So we have to go from receiving knowledge to producing it. And again, by talking about the grammar, by getting them into this conversational flow, it's going to help them. Now, just a quick sort of look at how can we get them into faster learning? Well, firstly, we need to talk with them about the importance of language learning. Do they need it to survive? Do they need it because it's useful? Do they need it because there's an emotional connection there? Do they need it because they're curious about it? How could we get them curious? And then how can we get them into this frequent manifestation of what they're learning and remembering and producing it? So how could we trick the brain? This is one of the basic questions. And why grammar? Well, I always think, and I don't know what you think, we can't escape from the fact that grammar or language is like a code. And it's a logical build-up of words, phonemes, syllables, sentences. It's a construction. So there is a logical way to do that. Now, as children, as you know, when we learn our native language, we are absorbing it naturally without going into the grammar. That's mainly because we do not have this prefrontal cortex developed. So it's the only way that we can learn it, by absorbing subconsciously. But we don't know the grammar. Personally, as an English native, I grew up not knowing anything about English grammar because we didn't do it at school. We don't do it in England at school. So we don't have that knowledge until we start learning other languages or until we start learning to teach our own. That's when we start to come into the grammar. So as children, we're just absorbing this knowledge. But then as adults, as we said earlier, we can start to associate, connect, and bring together the theory, the rules. But then we also need the implicit input and also the passive to active. So for me, grammar is a necessary evil. But if we can get them to enjoy it, become curious, the interesting thing is that as soon as you start to give them little bits of it, the brain naturally starts patterning. And if we can help in that process of patterning, they're going to learn faster. Now, there are certain things that we can take on board from the neuroscience when we are going into these key conversations about grammar. And we're going to look at these, all of them, one by one. So the first one, we do have to make sure that we understand very well. No two brains are the same. I always say when we come into these grammar conversations with learners, no two conversations will be the same. Because everybody has a different start point. Everybody has a different perspective or interpretation of grammar. Everybody has a different connection to native language. So all of these conversations are going to be unique. And I'm going to be dancing and adapting according to my learner. Secondly, you know, learning is neuroplasticity. It is about changing the brain. We know that we can remodel, remap at any age. So it's not that as we get older, we can't learn. We can. And there is a lot of research demonstrating that we even make neural connections up until the day we die. But the key question is, how can I help you to learn this? And that's going to be, as a coach, again, me adapting to you, to help you to make those connections and create those neural networks. And as we said in the introduction, we have to pay attention to this emotional gateway. Because if they start to feel threatened, we're going to get the adrenaline, the cortisol pumping in. We're going to get them into that fight or flight state. And if they go into a fight or flight, we really do have a problem with the two major areas that we need for learning. Hippocampus, prefrontal cortex are compromised. So they are not receiving the resources they need because the survival brain has kicked in. The survival brain is driving in those moments. Obviously, they cannot learn. So if we are in the middle of a grammar conversation and suddenly they go into a threat status, they're not going to learn. So the question there is, how can we get them to calm down? How can we really help them to calm down? Now, one way is the way that we communicate, and this grammar conversation that we have with them is designed to help them stay calm. And I'm going to show you the model in a bit. Now, I know that a lot of language trainers, teachers, educators, many of us come from backgrounds where we've been told no native language. I would like to go a little bit beyond that. So I'm not saying that we should be constantly speaking in native language. What I promote is that we should constantly provoke connections, native and target. What do I mean with that? Well, in the research, in 2016, we can see that the brain naturally goes to the native grammar structure areas first when we're learning a new language. And this is proving that our brain is trying to scaffold. And because of that, we can try to provoke those connections. So how is this in your native language? How is it different? Where are the differences? And it also helps me to understand where their brain is going when we are talking about the grammar. Let me give an example as well. If there is a grammar area that doesn't exist in their language, I can calm them down by explaining that. For example, present perfect. It may not exist in your language. Articles may not exist in your language. Continuous tenses don't exist in many languages. So if I can really say that right from the beginning, look, this is going to be something new for your brain. And we have to start with new neural networks from scratch. So it's going to feel different, it's going to feel difficult, and we're going to try to see if we can give you some bridges to help you to remember it and use it. Now, interestingly, Mila, Camila, Anna, I think all of you, and Sanela, I think you too, I'm not sure about Yelena and Ekaterina, I think all of you, articles do not exist in your languages. Right. However, may I say that I do think sometimes, I've spoken with some natives of your languages, and I think sometimes what happens is you use the demonstrative a little bit more. This table. Now we would say the table, and you might say this. So there we could try to bring in parallels. And I could try to get you thinking, okay, in your native language, when you use this, actually in English, it might be the. And let's see when we can distinguish the uses of that. And there, what I'm doing is I'm really helping you to create a bridge. Instead of saying this doesn't exist at all, we're saying actually it does, but you use slightly different, a demonstrative here. And that can help people connect. So this is what we do. This is what we are. I'm going to say we become provocateur par excellence. That's the idea. You're stimulating all the time through the conversation. And as we said, well, learning is firing and wiring. When you're firing, those neural networks are firing, they're connecting together. And that's when you are creating new neural networks, neuroplasticity in action. You know, as well, we can try to provoke those connections by building bridges. And if I know there is a strong connection with something, then I might see how I can introduce new where there's a weak connection to try to help you build a bridge. Now, the example I've given here is the word, it's fireplace in Spanish. Now, actually, fireplace in Spanish begins with H-O, hogar, and it also means home. So casa is house, hogar is home. So it's exactly the same. It's fireplace or home. And if I can then help you to bridge, maybe I show you a picture of a house and a fireplace at the same time. And then we come into that word house or home in English. And there you've got that bridge with the HO. And I try to see if we can use that to help strengthen that new word connection. So sometimes it could be us trying to come into the bridges. What could be a bridge? What could stimulate you to learn this fast? And they may come up with their own bridge. And by the way, in German, they have this beautiful expression, the Eselbrücke. They call it the donkey bridge. And I think that's brilliant. I always love that sort of image of the donkey bridge when you're trying to learn something and you say, I need a donkey bridge here. It's beautiful. Okay. When we come into brain-friendly grammar conversations through neurolanguage coaching, we have a two-step process. The first step is breaking down the grammar. The second step is building the grammar up through coaching conversations. So let's take the first step first. When we break down the grammar, the idea here is that we are creating a script. Can I just say that all of you are language experts? You know the grammar. I don't need to sit here and tell you anything about the grammar because you know it. However, the way that we deliver grammar is key. I confess, 20 years ago, when I was fully fledged with my clients, I had a portfolio of 50 clients at one time. I confess that I would sit in those sessions and we'd start a grammar area and we'd end up going around the houses, up the garden wall, out into the shed, God knows where, God knows, coming back. And literally the whole session would be all over the place. How many of you would confess to that happening sometimes? You start off with one thing and then you're kind of doing multiple things all the way through. It's normal because the brain and their brain and we're kind of dancing and we're moving, and this particular script will keep you focused. But it will also give you that sort of roadmap of, if they take me over there, I'm going to bring them back. So if something comes out, if I'm doing, for example, let's say I'm doing present continuous and suddenly prepositions come out, I would probably say, brilliant that that's come out. May we make a note of that and maybe come back to that another day with a focused conversation. Now, coming back to the present continuous, and I would bring them back. I'd signpost them back in. And that's what we have to do, because we have to really be aware you are the conductor of the orchestra here. You are conducting and directing their brains. If their brain is going all over the place, that's where the learning is going. If their brain is focused where you want it to go, and you keep it there, that's where they're going to have the focus and attention. So the most important thing is creating the script. It really is. let's just talk about grammar books. And as you can see, I'm wording this in a very special way. I love grammar books. Absolutely love Murphy. Murphy was, probably will always be my Bible. Everybody's got Murphy in the background. However, the one problem with all of the grammar books is they're very disjointed. And somehow, somewhere, we are the ones that join the dots. So if I say to you, the present, in Murphy, you have to go to like 20 pages to get the whole idea and flavor of what is in that topic. Now, what I'm proposing is that you, all of you, start to think about grammar in a different way. You start to think of grammar as the cluster. So the present, prepositions, adjectives. So the whole topic. And then what I'm proposing is that we map out from start to finish what is in that topic. And if we can do that, we then have the certainty of everything in there. And this is where I'm saying that we create the breakdowns. The breakdowns are like a script. So if I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about the present continuous, I would create the script. The present. Firstly, I would go to the present continuous. And I would say, okay, what's in this topic? And there we've got the formation. In the formation, we've got affirmative, question, negative forms. Then we've got the uses. How can I break the uses down? Well, actually I can, because there are slightly different uses of the present continuous. The first use is the now, this minute. I'm talking to you. But there's also this wide now. This century, technology is taking over the world. There's also the ongoing unfinished in the background. I'm reading a book. Not now, but it's unfinished. And there's also the third use of present continuous, the temporary. I'm living in Spain. That makes my learner feel, okay, where's she going next? So we've got uses that we can break down. And then at the end, we've got trigger words. What are the adverbs of time that tell me I'm in this tense? Then I do exactly the same with present simple. Formation, affirmative, question, negative, maybe contractions here. Then I go into the uses, break it down. Number 1, truth, fact. Number 2, routine, habit. Then I'd go to trigger words, adverbs of time. Now, we haven't finished the whole topic of present because, yes, present continuous, present simple, but we now have to go to the topic of state verbs, action verbs. And that's a whole topic there connected in this cluster. And state and action, I would break it down. Firstly, verbs that never take the ing. Secondly, exceptions to that. For example, the McDonald's advert. I'm loving it. That's an example. Then you've got the verbs that can be both, state and action. I'm weighing the potatoes weigh. And then you've got the verbs that can actually be both, but have different meanings. I see you. I'm seeing him later. Visiting. So again, I can take it step by step by step, breaking it down. We're still in the present. Next, I would need to think about the present tenses as futures. Still the present, because we're using present tenses. And I could even come there with adverbs of time that use a present. After you arrive, before you arrive, when you arrive. And if I really want to think about more that's in this present, we could go to zero conditionals. We could go to the US subjunctive. And at that point, I've created my big picture of this topic. Now, that big picture is for me, the coach. It's not for the learner. And I use that big picture as my script. And I will do more or less of this in a conversation according to the level of my learner. So this is, I would say it's a different thought process. And you know, when we create this breakdown, we don't need to put examples. We just need to create the pathway through the grammar. And you can do this with any grammar, with any language. And that will help you to give you the guide through the coaching conversation that we have afterwards with the client. Now, I've actually, if you allow me 1 second of marketing, I've actually created the book Brain Friendly Grammar. And the book is actually full of ready-made scripts. So any grammar topic is then broken down into a pathway, a guide. And there you can see, for example, prepositions. And I would steer the conversation through, okay, first, let's have a chat about what is a preposition. Secondly, let's talk about what are they used for and what's the purpose. Thirdly, let's break down when we use them. And there I could even break down the time prepositions. I can break that down into in, on, at. And then after that, point of time, duration of time. After that, we could go into pairs, from and to, for and since. We could go into synonyms, during, while, whilst. What's the difference? So under each one, I can still create more of a script. And with my learner, we're going to be going into that conversation with them. This is another example with gerunds. What are they? When do we use them combined with verbs? And when do we use that ing as a participle? And then going through each example. I've done this with quite a few learners, and it's interesting when you can get the parallel in the other language, especially in the Latin languages, because there's a lot of the times they use the infinitive and we use the ing. So again, it's that pitter-patter conversation with the learner. So once you've got your script, then we go to the coaching conversation. So this is now coming into step 2. This particular coaching conversation follows a model. And just to clarify, in coaching, they use models as a pathway through a conversation. Normally, it's an acronym which shows you what to do when in the conversation. The most famous coaching model is the GROW model. GROW, goals, reality, obstacles, options, way forward. Now, I've created this model to take us through the grammar conversations. And each part of the model also is connecting back to the neuroscientific principles. So what's the reason for this model? Well, it's to keep them calm. It's to make sure that they can ask us anything, anytime. How many times in grammar do we feel we can't understand, we feel stupid, we feel, oh my God, I'm never going to get this. How can we help our learners never to feel that? Never. And to feel, every question is real, it's valid, it means your brain is finding the way. So questions are brilliant. So how can I also stimulate you and provoke you all the way through? How can I break it down for you? How can we build it up? How can we keep on this framework? And by the way, this conversation could be for grammar and non-grammar. Could be for both. Now, there are certain things that are different to things that you normally do. May I say that there are certain things where we need to break the habits. One of the things that we're going to bring in is signposting, and I said this earlier. And we're going to signpost rather than elicit. I think a lot of training for teachers does focus on eliciting. Now, let me give you an example of what I mean, because I think there's different examples of eliciting. For me, my interpretation of eliciting is, imagine today we're going to do a different tense. I don't tell you what tense we're going to do. I just maybe say, okay, today we're going a little bit deeper into the past. And then I start asking questions. Where have you been? What have you done this morning? Who have you spoken to? What have you had for breakfast? So I'm asking the questions, trying to get you to notice, to feel, to hear that new tense. That for me is pure eliciting. Would you agree, everybody? That's what you would describe as eliciting, trying to get them to discover. Now, we're not doing that at all. We're going to signpost directly. Today, we're going to do a new tense. This tense is called present perfect. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the formation, how we form it. We're going to get you solid with that. And then we're going to move to the uses. Signpost. And that signpost is going to give them certainty, safety, no surprises, no me looking stupid because I have no idea what you're talking about. No me trying to discover and then getting frustrated because I'm not discovering. And all the way through everything that we do, we are signposting. After you signpost, then you can ask the question. And we're going to be asking rather than explaining. And we'll talk about this in a minute. We're also going to be stimulating them. Stimulate curiosity, stimulate dopamine. Ping pong back. You know when they say, I don't know, ping pong it back, try again. Well, what do you think? So we're not giving up. We're getting them to try to think it through, and we're involving them. You know, everything that we do as a coach, it's about interaction and involvement. We're not talking at anymore. We're talking with constantly. And the whole process it transforms. It becomes relaxing, fun, engaging, curiosity arousing, and it really becomes fun for both of us. So, if I may, I'd like to introduce the model. The model is PACT PQC, and it stands for Placement, Assessment, Conversation, Teaching, Powerful Questions, and Clarification. And I'm going to go through each one. Now, we've spoken a little bit about the placement. This is the signposting. Signposting equals certainty. And may I share with all of you that every step along the way, I'm going to signpost and summarize what we've just done, and then signpost what comes next, and summarize and signpost and summarize and signpost. Okay, so we finished the formation of the present perfect. Now we're going to move into the uses. Okay, we've finished the uses. Now we're going to look at the trigger words, these adverbs of time that tell us that we're in this tense. So you have this constant marking, and you're bringing their brain with you. I always have this image when we go through these conversations, it's like you're trekking through the mountains with a rope, and you've got a rope connected to your coachee, and you take a step forward and you pull them with you. You take a step forward, you pull them with you. And what you're making sure is that their brain is constantly where yours is. We cannot assume that their brain is with us when we don't bring them with us. We have to signpost all the way through. If you don't signpost, you're in danger of losing them along the way. Now, after signposting, we're then moving into what I call assessment. Now, again, this is going to be different, slightly different to eliciting, because I want to know what you know. So I'm not going into a discovery, I just want the facts. What do you know about the present perfect? What do you know about how we form this? And what I'm trying to do is find out what is your start point. Because if I know that you know something, I'm not going to waste time doing that again. So if I know your start point, we're going to start from there. And if I'm hearing there's gaps, then we're going to try to fill in the gaps. If I'm hearing there's misunderstandings, we're trying to put them right. If I'm hearing you don't know anything, okay, we'll start from scratch. Now, every single learner that we have is different. And one of the dangers when we are, I'm going to say we are often in the habit of just explaining it without thinking. Now we're going to do present perfect. And then immediately we go into present perfect is da, 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 and we explain. We need to break that habit. No more explaining. First, we find out, where are we scaffolding from here? You're going to save time. You know, one of the major reasons for this is because if we are explaining constantly and they know it, they're going to switch off. They're going to get bored. They've heard it 990,000 times before. They don't need to hear it again. So, first step is signpost. Now we're going to do da-da. Second step, what do you know about this? Now, if they know it, oh, and by the way, this slide, James Zull has written some brilliant books about the changing the brain. And he was a university lecturer. And he discovered that explaining actually really does not work. And the reason it doesn't work is because I'm always explaining it from my standpoint, from my perspective, from my interpretation. What I need is that you give me your interpretation. Now, if it's something new, then together I can give you mine, but I need you to bring me yours back. I need you to be able to interpret this, not just me explain it. So after we've checked in and we know what they know, we're then moving into conversation. Conversation, if they know it, then we're trying to get them to give us examples or to go into a conversation with us. The major point here is we need it to be real and personal. We need to get them to give us real examples. So not from the books, not examples from the books. You give me examples from your life. And finally, if in this major part of the conversation, they don't know something, we're moving into T for teach. You know, recently I start to say T for transfer of knowledge. Because what we're doing is we are doing it very gently in a non-directive style. Non-directive means with permission. May I share with you how we form the present perfect? I'm going to gently bring that information with lots of permission, non-directive style. And I may even ask if we can use your native language as a springboard. So Spanish has a beautiful parallel. Rafaela, good to see you. Italian as well. You know, you really could say the "ho mangiato." Okay, the use is different, but the form is the same. So how could we bring you into those connections with native? If it doesn't exist in your language, then I really need to share that with you from scratch. May I share with you? We create this tense using the verb to have and then the past participle. Now, obviously, when you get to present perfect, normally you've got a B1 level, so they know to have. They know that there are 3 things in that list of the irregulars or the regulars. So you can really talk it through. And what you're doing in this particular part, when you introduce new information, you're going to give them a little bit, maybe some examples, and then immediately ask them to create examples back. Immediately, so that they are using it instantly. And that's the way that we are introducing new info. Now, all the way through this conversation, I call it peppering. You are going to pepper this conversation with 2 types of powerful questions. The first one is relating to coaching. So, you know, really deeper questions like, how are you feeling with this? How could you create a bridge here? How can I help you? What do you need at this point? So those coaching questions to check in. And then also second type, native to target. How is this in your language? How is it different? How is it similar? Where are the differences? Peppering them all the way through together with clarification questions. Again, peppered all the way through. Am I hearing this? Is this what you're saying? Can I just check? Is this what you mean? And that's the conversation in the background. That's your skeleton, if you like. And just to clarify, this model is not linear. So we spoke about the GROW model earlier. The GROW model is G, then R, then O, then W. This isn't. This is about dancing in and out of all of these when you need them. Now, the constants are going to be PA, placement assessment. But then I may go placement assessment conversation. I may placement assessment PQ, T, placement assessment T, clarification. So you're going to be dancing in and out of this model. And as we said at the beginning, no 2 conversations are going to be the same. Every single learner or group of learners that you sit in front of, this conversation is going to be different. And literally, you're coming into that learner with this conversation. Just out of curiosity, and thank you for being here, everybody. I mentioned at the beginning, many people have signed up, but I know it's a strange time in the morning, and I normally never do this time in the morning for webinars. So thank you for being here. I know a lot of people are working. Ina, beautiful to see you as well, and some other familiar names. Just out of curiosity, would somebody like to be my coachee and I just demo something with you? I'm just checking the chat box. Let me have a look. Anybody like to be my coachee? Mila, fantastic. Okay, Rafaela, thank you. I know you and I have gone into quite a lot of PAC-PQC in the past, and hopefully you're getting some beautiful results with your learners. I know that you're brilliant with a lot of those grammar points. So, Mila, let me just check in if you're able to come onto the microphone. Are you?
Yes,
live?
yes,
Yes,
yeah.
you are. Yes, fantastic. Okay, Mila, out of curiosity, are there any grammar areas that you would like to sort of dive into?
Not in particular.
Anything that you feel that you would like to get more solid with? Even as a language teacher, sometimes there are areas that can be a bit confusing.
Mm-hmm. Right. Probably 2 plus infinitive or 2 plus ing form.
Right. Okay. Okay.
It's always confusing. Mm-hmm.
Right. 2 plus infinitive. You mean when there's a verb plus
plus 2 plus infinitive,
or verb
right?
when it's ing at the end.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. So let me just share with all of you what my brain is doing at the moment. My brain is actually thinking, okay, how can I create a pathway through this conversation? That's the first thing. So in the chat box, let me just give you a little bit of what my brain would now be doing. So I would go away and create my breakdown because I know that Mila has this as her goal and we're going to do this in a session. First thing I would come into would be, okay, the normal pattern of verbs together. So we'd have a chat about that first, and we will do in a minute. Then I would go into, okay, so sometimes we have verb plus ing. Let me just put here verb plus second verb with ing. And here I would go through probably categories. And I'm going to come here a little bit out of memory, by the way, everybody. We've got the category with it, which is the can't category. We've got the category, which is the, let's put recommend. We've got what I call the formalities category. And then we've got the emotions category. So those are some of the categories we could come into. After that, we could come into verbs that take both with different meanings. Like forget, remember. And we could take that as a separate pathway. So I've created my little pathway through this conversation. Mila, welcome to our session. Today we're focusing on your goal to clarify a little bit this sort of verbs that take the ing with another verb after, or verbs that take infinitive, and when we do what. How would you feel if we start off with this today?
Fine.
Okay. Now, when we take this topic, what would you say is the normal pattern in English when we have two verbs together?
I know about 3 ways.
Mm-hmm.
So the other verb can take 2 plus infinitive form. Yeah, this one. The second verb plus ing form.
Mm-hmm.
And third, infinitive without 2 or bare infinitive.
Right. Okay. Fantastic. So, how would you feel if we just explore then a little bit some examples from each?
Yeah, fine.
You mentioned first the 2 plus the infinitive form. What comes to mind for you there?
Decided to do something.
Excellent. Excellent. Yes. Right. What about the next one? The verb plus an ing form.
Don't know why. Regret doing something.
Excellent. Fantastic. And what about the third one? The base.
Make me do something.
Right.
Plus object.
Right. Okay. So on my list here, everybody, we could actually put modals and, if you like, causatives of forcing and doing and causing. Right, now, how would you feel if we now sort of break this down a little bit more? And what I'd like to know first is, we're introducing this topic, and as we go through this conversation, what would work for you that will make it more effective to remember everything that we're doing?
Probably visuals. Because I usually take photos. I mean,
fantastic.
Not literally.
Yeah, no, fantastic. So what I'm hearing there as your coach, you would like me to sort of create a visual as we're going, and then you would then take a record of it or a photo and then take it away and maybe reproduce it yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. So everybody in the background, I would then be creating the visual with Mila as we go. Okay, so Mila, we've kind of looked at the first rule, if you like, which is the verb plus an infinitive form. How is that in your language?
The same, I guess.
Right. So
mostly, yeah,
okay.
Mostly infinitives, and
right.
That's the problem.
Okay, and may I check in with you? In your language, do you have anything which is like the ing form?
Yes, but forms, yeah, but not functional. I mean, functionality is different. The use is different.
Right. Okay. So you never have it with a verb and then that form after.
No.
Okay. Okay. So maybe now then move into this second, which is obviously the problem category. The verb with this ing. And how would you feel if we try to get them into different sort of tables with different sort of categories to help you remember them?
All right.
Out of curiosity, can you think of any sort of category that we could start with?
Probably those patterns which you have to memorize. There are no rules as far as I know. Yes, and the second category, again, the verbs which can take both forms.
Right. Okay.
ing and 2 plus infinitive, depending on the situation, like regret, for example.
Yes, yes. So we'll look at those in a minute. So coming into the ones where you say there's no rules, may I help you to just get them into little boxes? So one of the first boxes that we could really come into, we're going to call it the can't box. And these are all expressions with can't. Anything coming to mind as I say that to you?
Can't do it. Exceptions? No.
Well, may I then steer you?
I mustn't do it.
Actually, no. These are unique expressions. May I give you an example?
Okay.
What I mean? I can't stop loving you.
All right. Yeah, I see. Can't stand. Right. Okay.
Fantastic. Right. Now you're started. Okay. So that's what we're looking for. All of these examples. What comes to mind?
As I said, can't stand doing something. Can't stop thinking about it.
Yeah.
Can't bear it.
Yeah.
But can't bear doing something. Can't stand, can't stop. Yeah, I guess that's it.
Right. Okay.
I can't, yeah.
I can't stop thinking about it. Yes. Okay. Now, how do you create those sentences in your language?
I can't stand when, I can't stand when in our language. I would say, if I think in my language, I would say, I can't stand when people tell me something, for example. So that is why I have to change this way of thinking, right? I can't stand being told.
Right. So I can't stand when I'm being told.
Yeah, when I'm being told, or
Okay.
when people tell me. In my language, not even being told, but when people tell me, literally.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you use the present tense. You create a sentence. I can't stand
longer. Yeah,
it
like
when
long
people tell me.
sentence.
Right.
Yeah.
May I share that we can do that in English as well? I can't stand it when people tell me what to do.
Yeah.
So it sounds like that's the only way that you can do it in your language.
That's the only way, yeah.
Right, right. So how do you feel with this I can't stand being told construction?
Now fine, once I'm familiar with it, but for students, it's a problem.
Yes, absolutely. Now, may I share with you that we could actually get these into a little bit, the groups. So we could say, and you've said, I can't stand, I can't bear, I think you said. Yeah. We could also say, I can't face. Those could be the sort of negatives. Then we've got, I can't stop, I can't help, and I can't resist, which again have all the same meaning, but slightly different. How about some examples there of each of some of those?
Can't help, yeah. I can't help doing something. I can't help cooking. It's not about me,
right?
But still, I don't know why. Yeah, I can't help. Yeah. We again, it's different in our language. We say in a different way. Yeah. Again, we need when or when.
Yeah, but it's brilliant that you're now realizing this is how I do it in native. This is how I do it in English. And obviously, there's quite a few songs, like the song I said, I Can't Stop Loving You. You've got the Police, I Can't Stand Losing You. There's a lot of sort of songs that we could bring out, and these expressions are in there. Okay, so we've got the first category, and we've got those examples there. Now, we would move into the next category. Mila, I'm going to stop there because you and I could be here all day having this beautiful conversation, enjoying, connecting. That's the spirit of this type of conversation, everybody. It's this pitter-patter, let me check in. How are you with this? Are you okay? Let me put you right. Okay, let's add something here. How is it in your native? And you've got this constant interaction. Now, if I can just share with you in the background, I do actually have another book, which at the moment is a PDF form. Over the summer, this book will be published as a proper book. Now, this particular book does have what I call brain-friendly grammar materials in it. And here you have what I've done as the categories. So you've got the can't category, the formality category, the recommend, the emotions, and I was missing earlier the stop-start. And there you can really help your learners to put them into the boxes. Now, the formalities for me are very much the formal, legal sort of words, you know, admit, doing, excuse, saying, involve, mentioning, or mention, doing, you know, those sort of avoid things, avoid doing, defend. All of those for me are very formal constructions. And then the stop, start, delay, avoid, postpone, put off, etc. The recommends, easy, and the emotions as well. Now you could even, on the next page, you've got the ones which are the ones that do both. Remember to, remember doing. And you've got the pattern, pre, post, pre, post. And that's the pattern for remember, forget, regret. And then you've got the go on and the stop, which are actually in the same pattern when it's the same action or new action. So again, you get your learner into those boxes. And you get the learner into what's the difference in your language. How would you say, I mustn't forget to do something? Or I cannot forget doing it in the past. How would you say that in your native language? What's the difference? How would you make that difference? And get them really understanding the parallels. Okay? Mila, how do you feel after that conversation?
Great. Thank you.
Brain gym for
Actually, yeah, a short comment. Actually, I've been using this strategy for quite a while, but secretly, because according to standard grammar, Cambridge, Oxford, you can't do that. I mean, it's forbidden. This parallel, probably with idioms or some collocations, it's okay, but not with grammar. So that is why, thank you very much for this insight. Now I understand that I'm not alone.
No, you're not alone.
I can go public.
Absolutely,
Right.
absolutely. And honestly, I always say the neuroscience is our weapon. And everything that we do in neurolanguage coaching is based on the neuroscience. And this is the neuroscience, this is the neuroscientific research. Where is it? Hang on, there it is. This is the neuroscientific research. 2016, we have the proof that when we learn a new language, our brain is going to native or other languages to scaffold. That is how the brain functions. The brain is scaffolding on previous experience and knowledge. Now, I don't know about all of you, but now when I look back at my language learning process, it makes sense. Because that's all I did. I scaffolded. So I went from French, Latin, Greek, to teaching myself Spanish, scaffolding from Latin and French, plus teach yourself Spanish books. Then I scaffolded into Catalan, no lessons. Then I scaffolded into Italian, no lessons. And then I scaffolded into German, 2, 3, or 4 lessons. And now, whenever I'm trying to come into a new language, I'm trying to scaffold first. And this is key, because this is how you learn faster. And the brain is patterning, and the brain is deciding, okay, this is this language, this is this language. Okay, this is the difference. This is a similarity. So we now have the research proving this. And by the way, there are a lot of Delta, CELTA trainers now coming into this because they know it's real. And may I share with all of you, I think some of you know this, but I always use a very interesting example here. I know if my learner has a Latin brain or a Slav brain when they say depend of or depend from. And all of us know here, neither of them are correct. The brain has gone to the native language. And if you ask somebody, I probably would say that 90% of the time, mistakes are native interference. Whenever somebody makes a mistake, ask them, where is that mistake coming from? I would guarantee more often than not, it's because their brain has gone to native. I had a beautiful example with a German learner years ago who in one particular session, he was getting very frustrated because his team were not listening to him and he was telling them things. And every second sentence he would say, I said this wouldn't work, see you. And then again, a couple of sentences later, yes, and I knew it wouldn't work, see you. And after a time I said, may we talk about this see you, because I have no idea what it is. Can we just check in? What are you trying to say with that? And he said, yes, well, in German, we kind of say da 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 da, siehst du. That then allowed me to say, what you're trying to say is you see. In German, they say see you. In English, we say that didn't work. You see, I was right. You see. And it was just the inversion. I didn't get it until he told me. And then together we were able to say, okay, well, in German, it's like that. But in English, you have to say it like this because otherwise nobody's going to understand you. And that gave him the insight as well. And that is beautiful demonstrations of what happens when we are going to the native, going to the language that we know, scaffolding from previous. So Milan, you're not alone. And by the way, now you've got about 1,500 neurolanguage coaches who are together with you. So don't worry, we're bringing it out more and more in the world. And I think as well, you know, when you've learned languages and when you are language learners, as well as language educators, that's when you start to join the dots and it starts to make sense. And you start to observe, what is my learner's brain doing? Now, just to finalize the webinar, we're coming into sort of the end. This is really a different way of bringing grammar. We've had grammar learners totally transform. We've had people who hated grammar absolutely love it. We had one lady, she had a group that hated it. She had one woman that would never talk in the grammar part. And one day she did this. They were there for 2 hours and they didn't realize it. Before they knew it, 2 hours had gone by. And the one who never spoke in the session suddenly started speaking because she was allowed to connect native and target. It was like her brain just exploded. And by the way, if you get learners who say, oh, we shouldn't be connecting with native, show them the research, explain to them. And you'll be amazed at some of the connections. For example, Mila, Anna, I think also, I was sitting with my Polish teacher trainer some years ago, and we were brainstorming connections, Polish English. We were really excited in a coffee bar, and we were really like in language paradise. And there was one moment where I think she said, we made a parallel between, you have cases in Polish and you have an ending which shows when there is a lack of something, I believe. So when there is a lack, you have a certain ending. For example, spotless, nameless. And she connected it with a certain ending that you have. And obviously in English, we have the ending less, pointless, helpless. And I think there are patterns that you can start exploring together with your learners. And as soon as your learner says, okay, well, that's this ending in Polish, that's this ending in English, it becomes easy. And they have the door open. So, you know, it really is us connecting more with the language as well as them and helping them then to connect afterwards. So just to wrap up, we are moving into this era of neuro heart education where we're connecting brain, heart, intuition all together into this beautiful, holistic human sitting in front of us. And neurolanguage coaching is the specialized language arm for this particular education, bringing neuroscience, bringing coaching together. And there are nearly about 1,500 neurolanguage coaches all across the world. Definitely it is a totally different way of communicating, non-directive, absolutely brain friendly, everything that we do. It's about having the system of being brain friendly. And it's not only just doing the course, it's really coming into a network of beautifully like-minded educators. I was speaking with one the other day and she was saying how nice it feels to be together with others, you know, and working, a lot of us, we've worked as islands, as mini entrepreneurs alone, sort of in our little sphere of where we're teaching, and to actually know that you can connect with groups, with others, you can have practice sessions, you can have meetups, and we have meetups, private workshops, troubleshooting workshops. You've also got a network free of charge. You've got all sorts of things that we arrange, and conferences as well, and constantly looking to improve and enhance the learning process. This is all about the learners of today. So it's not about us as the teachers, it's really about what can we do to help the learners who are different. You know, the learners of today really are different brains, neurodiversity, a lot of trauma, a lot of interference with AI, and we are there trying to also develop new ways to reach them. So if you are interested, do connect with us. We do have some upcoming courses. One actually that's, oh, I've made a mistake there. It's the 30th of June, not the 30th of July. Just to clarify, we have the next evening course on the 30th of June. If you're interested to just dip your toes in, I've also developed now an introduction to language coaching. And it's literally just the bare essentials from coaching, the models, and how you can bring in a little bit of that coaching into the process. It's totally different to the neurolanguage coaching, which is then going to the professional coaching, the accreditation, plus the neuroscience. The intro course, there's an e-course for the introduction to language coaching, and that's €50. And then you have a practical 10-hour course for that. And then there's an e-course free of charge, bringing in the principles of neuroscience and everything to prepare you for the neurolanguage coaching course, which is the full course. Now, the neurolanguage coach is accredited by the International Coach Federation. It's one of the only courses worldwide with the accreditation, and we do have discounts for this course, because I'm very aware that it is an expensive course. Just to share with all of you, when I trained as a professional ICF coach, it cost me nearly £10,000. And that was nearly 20 years ago. And I had to take out bank loans and take installments, and little by little. Admittedly, I did a lot of training as a life coach, so it wasn't necessary to do so much, but coaching in itself is a very expensive training. So I try to help as much as I can with any of those discounts.